Hello, and welcome to One Controller Per Podcast, episode 55. Here I am, Ben Yoder, talking to you today about... Let's talk about Dragon Quest Heroes 2. I've been playing some of that. I haven't been playing as much video games in general as I would like this week, but hey, that's always life for the most part. I lucked out last week because I was on the plane for almost 10 hours, so I just got 10 hours to dump into a variety of games, which is cool. But that's the nice thing about plane rides, just there's nothing else to distract me. no article writing or anything like that. So yeah, Dragon Quest Heroes 2. I've been putting some time into that this week, and I'm finally getting towards the end of it. It's surprising how long it is. Maybe I don't know. I mean, it's like a 30 to 40 hour game. It seems like it's just pretty standard for a JRPG, but as a Musou game, I would think they typically would keep that like shorter or more just like a spin-off to like an RPG in general. Dragon Quest Swords is like 10 hours long and that's it. But this feels pretty hefty. And it's been nice because as you unlock these characters, you kind of realize just like how different everybody plays. Even if they have like the same weapon type as another character. I'm just burping like a crazy boy. Get all that gas out while I can. Okay. Anyways, so there's the whole so it's like there's a bunch of different weapons you can assign to your main character. You can choose between I think 5 vocations, and then each of those vocations have like choices for like 3 different weapons. And then you have the actual characters who are like characters from other games that have preset weapons and stuff, and they have their own movesets and typically like a set of skills you can choose between and set up on the system or set up on your quick action. You get like 4 quick actions, and typically I feel like everybody has towards the end of the game about 8 skills or something like that. And then on the even further end of that, there's these like special online only characters where you can that are pretty limited in what you can do for upgrading them and customability or customizing them. But they seem to scale really well with like the levels, so they continue to stay relevant even though they have pretty limited character progression. And like a character who like your little creative character person, he uses a bow, and then like Angelo, he uses a bow, and then I think it's like Bianca, which is like on that third tier of like a bonus character thing that uses a bow, all play like really differently, which I really like. I'd say like the creative character probably has the most similarities between the two, but each of the 2 characters that use bows are kind of like on the opposite spectrums of each other in terms of like how they should play. And they really sit down and think about like different play styles for an individual weapon depending on the character. Like there's a martial artist who's like this big buff guy, and he's all kind of about charging attacks. So like every time you punch, you can hold the button to charge the punch and hit. And it does quite a bit of damage, just, the time to sit there and charge and hit, and then you have a chance of getting knocked back and things like that. And he kind of has a lot of, like, self-buffs. But then you have, like, I forget what her name is, like, Ari, I don't remember. There's this other martial artist that's more about, like, fast strikes and stuff, and there is a charge attack on her, but it's not, like, a major component of her combos or anything like that. It's just a lot of really fast strikes, and like she can divide herself. And then so you have your creative character that kind of is in between there. So I really like that about the game, that like each character feels really diverse and unique in a way that I didn't think they normally. I don't know if you see that kind of like diversity in characters based off weapon types typically in a lot of games, but I like it. It's pretty nice. But I'm towards the end of the game. I'm probably I feel like I'm at the end of the game, but I am like continuing to enjoy the story and things like that. So that's pretty fun. I don't know when I'll like. I've mentioned a lot before. I really like the structure of this game, that it is more like an RPG with a Musou element added into it. But I don't know, like, sometimes I feel like I should play a more traditional Musou game, and I always look at like Hyrule Warriors and and think about that, because I'm a big Zelda fan. Outside of Breath of the Wild, I'm a big Zelda fan, and I would like to spend some more times in those like crossover style games. I think that stuff is really valuable if done right. And I feel like Dragon Quest Heroes feels like it's done right. Admittedly, I have not played much Dragon Quest outside of Dragon Quest 8, so maybe I noticed like some of the localization on some of the characters is really weird, and I have no idea if that's like accurate to the original game and how it was translated and things like that. So I'd be curious to see how somebody who played Dragon Quest V feels about like these two characters having like these really strong Russian accents in Dragon Quest Heroes 2, and if they were like originally portrayed as such. I will say that there's a lot of Musou games out there though, so like it's a genre that feels kind of overdone at the moment. I actually was looking at Record of Grand Crest War, and I was like, oh, this looks like a Musou, but I actually sat down and looked at it, and I mean, it's not. I'm pretty sure it's not an Omega Quintet joint. Let me just double check. Yeah, it's a Namco Bandai thing. Or Bandai Namco. I always get that mixed up. But it is kind of like a hack and slash, big, battle kind of conflict kind of thing. But at the same time, you have like the ability to control squads and like tell them where they need to move to and stuff. I thought that game looked pretty neat. I hadn't heard about it until this weekend, to be honest. I didn't know there's apparently an anime for it too. I think it's based off the Record of Lotus War series or something, or like some kind of spiritual successor to that. But yeah, the game looks surprisingly alright. Although the gameplay I saw was running at like half of what I would consider an acceptable frame rate these days. A consistent frame rate. It was like, pretty choppy, but I'm actually looking at some of the footage on the website right now, and that actually looks a lot cleaner. So we'll see. We'll see. I probably will never play it, but it looks interesting. I don't think it's ever been announced for America or anything like that either. I could be wrong. I don't know. Bandai Namco's been pretty good about localizing their anime-based games and stuff like that. I don't think it's anything super special looking, but it's kind of nice. Nice to see this kind of like hack and slash game have a nice gimmick on top of it. Especially like a strategy gimmick. I say, as I started streaming Full Spectrum Warrior this week, and oh man, that stream, the first hour was like all tutorial, but once you get going, that game is still pretty good, I feel like. So yeah, I'm looking forward to playing more Full Spectrum Warrior. I guess that's something I did play this week as well, in addition to Dragon Quest Heroes 2. I didn't come in with like a super sharp idea of what I'd be talking about today, but I did. I mean, just going around with like more of the news stuff I was poking around with today. I also saw that Yomawari collection is coming to Switch, which Yomawari is like a little cute like a little cute horror game that came out on the Vita. And there's a sequel, I believe, and then also a phone game. Might be remembering that wrong. I think there's a phone game maybe, but if not, and if there is, I don't think it's in that collection. This getting ported to Switch as a collection, so I actually might jump on it then, because I think the original two were kind of limited run print kind of things, so I don't think they're particularly cheap to get. I don't think they're super expensive either, but I think they're not like a standard retail price. I have to go back and check and look. So if there's like a physical copy for the Switch version, I might end up getting that, and then just having them both on the same collection is kind of nice. So I can only play one and then never play the other one, probably. I don't know how long those games are or if they're good or anything like that. They've been around for a while, but I think they have a nice style to them at the very least. So yeah, I'm not super excited about anything on Switch at the moment. I'm still trying to get through like Penny Punching Princess and stuff like that. And as we come up to E3, and maybe I should have talked about E3 this episode, but as we're coming up to E3, like I don't really know what I want out of Nintendo on that kind of stuff. I don't really mention Sony specifically on PlayStation 4 because I don't really play much Sony first-party content. So what ends up being on PS4 just ends up being whatever third-party software or something like that that I end up getting typically. But I am kind of interested in that new Pokemon game. I think it's Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. Mainly because it looks a lot like Pokemon, but at the same time, mechanically, there's a lot going on that's different. Just in terms of, even down to not having random battles, or it sounds like there's no wild battles per se. You're just like throwing the Pokeballs, kind of like in Pokemon Go, and I've never played Pokemon Go, so that would be a first time experience for me. But it sounds like kind of a simplified Pokemon game, that just kind of mixes in some elements from both Pokemon Go and the regular Pokemon. And as someone who played Pokemon White after like I don't know how many years, it must have been like 10 or so years since playing Pokemon Red, and then being like, oh, this game is still kind of the same thing. Any kind of change in Pokemon gets me slightly more interested than just like, oh, this is another Pokemon, but it looks nicer kind of thing. I always say I want to like get into Pokemon and like pursue that more, but it's just the time commitment. And I think the problem is that the beginning of the game where you play through to the like the whatever for you go down to Victory Road. I don't know if this is true for every game, but I know in White you go down like Victory Road at some point, and eventually you fight Elite Four or something like that. I don't know for why. I can't remember. It's been too long. But I do find like in that main story section, I always just kind of get bored and stop playing at some point during that. And I know that Pokemon has a lot of end game content, and sometimes I wonder if I would be more interested in that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I might check these one out. We'll see. Get that weird Pokeball controller thing. I don't know. It depends on how expensive it is. I like little weird gimmicky controllers. And yeah, it's the same thing as the Joy-Con really, but at the same time, I'm not a huge Joy-Con fan. So something different might be neat. Although holding it like a ball, I don't know. I don't know how many buttons that thing uses and how accessible those are. Because there's really just like the analog stick on the front of the controller as far as I can see from the video. I'm sure there's buttons on it as well to select stuff, or they do something to get around that in some way. So yeah, that video game looks alright. I probably won't get it because even video games I want to play, I end up don't playing usually because things. But yeah. So let's do Fortune Cookie. I think I skipped Fortune Cookie last week and the week before. Let me go ahead and pull that up here. Where's the Fortune Cookie? If you haven't been here before, Fortune Cookie is where I just grab a random Yu-Gi-Oh collection and we're just gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about it for a little bit, like Phantasy Star Universe. Phantasy Star Universe, the PlayStation 2 version to be specific. I think that might be the only version of Phantasy Star Universe I own. I go through fits and bits where I sometimes just want to get Phantasy Star Universe for the original Xbox 360, for the Xbox 360, and it's a bad idea because, like, I don't know if you know this, and maybe this just segues right and talk about Phantasy Star Universe. That base game is kind of not great in terms of offline content. You have the story you can go through, which I think is alright. I think it's like a 20-hour story, 20, maybe 30 hours. But and I liked like the characters and the voice acting and stuff at the time, even though it's pretty bad for the most part. But I think the story for Phantasy Star Universe franchise is a lot more interesting than Phantasy Star Online, if only by the amount of it that's told. Or Phantasy Star Online, a lot of it's very much in the background, or like little data logs you read. Phantasy Star Universe is like, here's some cutscenes and like character development stuff, and you play as Ethan Weber as a main character rather than your create a character. But you can create a character for offline play, I think. Let me think about that. Can you do that? You might. I feel like yes, you can do that in Phantasy Star Universe. You can also just play as Ethan in the story mode offline as well, and just level Ethan, which is kind of interesting. That thinking about that of just like, oh, once you make a new character in the non-story section, I think all the quests that are available to Ethan are just available to your new character. So you're pretty much just playing through the whole game again as your new character. And it's like starting over. You can't like convert Ethan over to a created character or something like that, which seems like might have been the better choice in terms of offline content. Maybe not, definitely not for online. Phantasy Star Universe went through the whole process of having characters server side to avoid hacking and stuff like Phantasy Star Online was plagued with. So server-side characters helped a lot with that stuff. I don't know if that prevented everything, but, I'm sure it helped to some extent. But yeah, Phantasy Star Universe is just a very bare bones game. There's no like timing element to the attacks. There is like limited, I feel like a limited number of weapons, a limited number of photon arts, and like leveling up spells is a very grindy process. While you sit there and like cast on yourself. But I think the thing it just has over all the other entries in the Phantasy Star Universe is just like a really fleshed out cinematic experience compared to the other games. I mean, Phantasy Star Portable and Phantasy Star Portable 2 definitely have their cutscenes with like voice acting and stuff, but they're rare compared to the amount of just like 2D portraits talking to each other that you see in those games. That's not to say that's particularly a bad way to deliver that story. I think Phantasy Star Universe Ambition of the Illuminist is probably the expansion which actually has the least amount of like production values for the story content. Was probably my favorite story at the time when I was playing through it, but just like seeing the ambition of that original like model of like the cutscenes and stuff in that original game was, I don't know if it was particularly great, as it was just, maybe it's just inconsistent is the thing. It's just you have that original game where it's like, oh, here's all these fully voice-acted cutscenes, and you get down to the Ambitions of the Illuminist, where it's like, here's a bunch of dialogue boxes while, your character models stand around, and then eventually it turns into, here's a bunch of character portraits. Yeah, it's been kind of up and down, but I mean, like, Phantasy Star Online 2 has plenty of cutscenes, it seems like, so, and that seems to be what everyone's playing anyways nowadays. I mean, Phantasy Star Universe, I think all of these servers are down for Phantasy Star Universe, even like the free-to-play ones they put up like right before Phantasy Star Online 2 came out. But I do think there are some like fan groups trying to do some of the server stuff for Phantasy Star Universe. I just don't know how complete it is. I mean, the more server reliant a game is, the more work that's to be put into it. I remember like Phantasy Star Online 3 on the GameCube was almost completely broken when playing on like a fan server. So yeah, it's interesting. It's a interesting little piece that I might return to someday. I might finally crumble and buy the Xbox 360 version and sit down and play through it and ask myself why. I did get a copy of Phantasy Star Portable Infinite recently from a good friend. So maybe I'll play that someday. I think there's a translation that's still going on, still an ongoing translation. But I think they finished translating and inserting all the text into the game. It's mainly just like bug stuff. I also think you might not be able to play it on real hardware due to the, I think there's like a RAM issue in terms of like maybe not a RAM issue, but like a storage issue in terms of the amount of text that can be stored in the Japanese version compared to the US version on like an original PSP. So I think it might be emulator only, but I'm pretty much talking my ass on that. I just was reading some stuff in the forum thread for it on, I think it's like GBA Temp or whatever, where they have a bunch of ROMs and stuff over there. So maybe someday I'll play that. I need to like get a PlayStation TV and modify it. I think all of those are running pretty old OSs, so you can probably pretty easily just buy one and then just make sure you don't connect to the internet and then modify it. I got to do that at some point. We'll see. That's like another $60 I got to worry about, which hey is a great price for a Vita. If it's still $60, I still highly recommend getting a PlayStation TV, even with its limitations. Some games on there, like Freedom Wars, just looks great. It looks like a PlayStation 3 game on a TV. It's crazy. I mean, there's obviously games that don't look as good, like Sword Art Online Hollow Fragment, which looks like a PSP game. A very nice looking PSP game. But yeah. And then, like, just being able to, like, insert certain games onto a PS TV, because, like, Valkyria Chronicles 2, I think they added support for Valkyria Chronicles 2 on PlayStation TV, and then we're selling the game for like $5 at the time. And I already had a physical copy, but like being able to play Valkyria Chronicles 2 full screen over a PS TV was really nice, because if you do a video out on a PSP, it's like this whole thing with, the screen size not being quite right, and it's just like, yes, the game looks better because it's in a smaller window, but at the same time, I'm just like, as ugly as this game looks blown up on a 40-inch TV, we're just gonna do it. I'm sure there's probably some people who look at that like how I look at like playing 4x3 games in widescreen, where it's like, oh, you're a monster for doing this. But I am a dummy, and like I'm gonna blow this Game Boy Advance game up on my not giant TV. I have a pretty small TV actually, but giant for me since I sit like right in front of it. But on my 40-inch TV, what was originally on this Post-it note style Game Boy Color screen or something like that. So yeah, that's gonna do it for this week. Thanks for coming. I think it's probably best I make no promises on content right now as I continue to work on this website. It's taking longer than I thought, and it's taking more work than I thought, but I'm getting there. I'm definitely getting there. So hopefully soon I'll have something finished, and then I can start working on other things again. I'm debating, and you may or may not see this week. It depends on how I feel this weekend about maybe trying this out, and then if it works out, maybe publishing it. I think I might start doing like, I don't know if news articles is the right word, but like a commentary on certain things. And I don't mean this as like, oh, I'm not going to sit there and cover like, oh, Bethesda's, Rage 2 leaked out, even though I have no like interest in Rage stuff or something like that. It will probably just be like, basically at the end of the week, I go through a week worth of game news and just kind of parse out what I want to read and what I want to look at, and then just I have basically at the end of the session a bunch of tabs I have open. I go through all of them, figure out if I want to like, if there's anything I want to grab from them in terms of like saving stuff. Or like trying to keep them in mind as something to look at again later, or if I want to try to, if the kid's like a DMM game or something, try to sit there and install it or something like that. I do that, but then a lot of it goes kind of to waste. So I'm thinking about just kind of making these little posts that kind of wouldn't really be news per se, like a news article per se, but be like a commentary on some of the things I find. So I don't know if that'd be interesting or not. The only issue is that compared to like streaming or doing a podcast, it'd probably take up more time than I would think. Versus streaming is pretty easy to do. It takes like 2.5 hours of my week to just sit down and do it. And it's a lot of times it'd be like a time that I'd be using for like something else that's not article writing anyways. And then podcasts are just so short and easy to do. I barely consider them any time spent. This would probably take longer depending on how much I'd want to spend time on it. I don't know. We'll see. I might draft something up this weekend and see how it goes. So, so that's going to be it for today. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope you guys have a great week. Bye. It was episode 55. I forgot if I mentioned that.